An immense fleet of alien ships hovered silently near the edges of the Sol system. The Zarkari Dominion, a war-hungry species that had conquered countless star systems, was preparing to launch its final assault on Earth. Their leader, General Kor, stood on the command deck of the flagship, staring at the blue planet on his view screen. He was confident in his superiority. With their vast numbers, advanced technology, and deadly weapons, the Zarkari had never lost a battle. Today, they would crush humanity, who they saw as weak and insignificant. As General Kor and his officers discussed their plans for invasion, their scanners suddenly blinked with an unexpected reading. A single human ship had appeared on their radar. The Zarkari officers scoffed. One ship, against a fleet of their size. It seemed ridiculous. But the readings weren't lying. This human vessel was large, larger than any ship they had anticipated. They watched as it approached, its sleek design cloaked in an advanced stealth field, rendering it invisible to their sensors. For a moment, the alien fleet waited. General Kor raised an eyebrow, amused. Surely, it was some kind of error. The Zarkari had been the only ones with cloaking technology this advanced. But as the ship drew closer, the cloak deactivated. What they saw sent a shockwave through the entire bridge. The ship revealed itself in its full, terrifying glory. The UNS Vengeance, a human battleship unlike anything the Zarkari had ever seen. It was a massive, angular vessel, not sleek and beautiful like their own ships, but ugly and brutal, designed not for elegance, but for war. The hull was scuffed and battered, with weapons jutting out in every direction. Railguns, energy cannons, and a terrifying array of plasma turrets covered its surface, as if it had been built for nothing but destruction. And worst of all, there was something alive about it. The ship radiated a dark, menacing presence. It was not just a machine, it was a predator. General Kor stared in disbelief. No human fleet was supposed to possess such power. Their technology was primitive compared to the Zarkari, yet here was this enormous, terrifying ship. As the ship drew closer, it became clear. This wasn't just another prey ship. This was a hunter, and they were the prey. The Zarkari fleet watched in stunned silence as the human ship slowly approached. Its firing array powered up, and the Zarkari's confidence began to crumble. Before they could even react, the UNS Vengeance fired. A series of railgun shots tore through the emptiness of space, each one hitting its mark with deadly precision. The Zarkari ships scattered in panic, but it was too late. The human ship's shields absorbed everything thrown at it, and its AI analyzed and predicted every move the Zarkari made. It was a perfectly coordinated attack. The humans didn't just fight, they fought. Their AI didn't just calculate distance or trajectories. It learned from every shot, adapting faster than any living creature could. The Zarkari tried to retaliate, but their weapons were no match for the human technology. The UNS Vengeance turned the tables in an instant. It wasn't a warship. They had never seen anything like it before. This was something else entirely. A killer ship. In their desperation, the Zarkari fired back, launching powerful energy blasts at the human ship. The attack was fierce, but the Vengeance's shields absorbed it all. Even the most powerful Zarkari weapons couldn't even scratch its surface. General Kor's eyes widened in horror. They were not dealing with technology here. They were facing intelligence, ingenuity, and a will to fight that the Zarkari couldn't even begin to understand. The humans didn't just survive, they thrived in battle. The Zarkari fleet tried to retreat, but the UNS Vengeance wasn't done. The human ship had an array of drones and fighter ships that were deployed instantly, each one moving in a perfect formation, tearing apart anything in their path. The Zarkari were outmatched at every turn. Their weapons couldn't hit their targets, and their ships were torn to pieces one by one. General Kor, unable to believe what was happening, ordered a full retreat, but it was already too late. The human eye had anticipated this. Every escape route was sealed off. As the remaining Zarkari ships scattered in disarray, The UNS Vengeance's railguns kept firing, reducing them to debris. The Zarkari fleet was crumbling, and the human ship stood tall in the center of it all, unharmed and terrifyingly victorious. The few remaining Zarkari ships tried to flee, but they were hunted down, one by one. It was a massacre. As the last Zarkari ships were destroyed, General Kor, in a final act of desperation, sent out a transmission. He tried to communicate, to plead for mercy, but it was too late. The humans were not interested in mercy. They didn't just want to survive. They wanted to prove something. And they had. The UNS Vengeance hovered over the wreckage of the alien fleet. No more Zarkari ships remained. The human ship sent a single transmission across the galaxy. This was a warning. The next time you come for us, there will be no survivors. Across the galaxy, alien species trembled at the thought of facing the humans. The Zarkari Dominion, once a powerful empire, was now a hollowed-out shell, its forces decimated by a single human ship. The humans had shown the galaxy that they were no longer prey. They were now the hunters. And the universe would never forget the terror they felt when they first saw a human battleship. The battle started with a shocking roar as the Zarkari fleet fired their first salvo at the UNS Vengeance. General Kor had no doubt that their advanced energy cannons would tear through the human ship's defenses. These weapons had crushed entire planets before. The Zarkari's fleet was vast and well-equipped, and they were certain that no single ship, especially one from a primitive species like humans, could withstand their assault. The powerful blasts from the Zarkari ships hurtled toward the UNS Vengeance with terrifying speed, but as the energy beams struck, something unexpected happened. The human ship's shields shimmered brightly, absorbing the energy with ease. Not a single blast penetrated the ship's defenses. The Zarkari fleet's jaws dropped. How was this possible? Their weapons were the most advanced in the galaxy. There was no way that humans, who were so new to space warfare, could have shields that strong. But the UNS Vengeance didn't just block their attacks. It laughed in the face of their firepower, mocking the Zarkari's greatest weapon. As if to answer the Zarkari's confusion, the ship's AI immediately went to work. Within seconds, the human system calculated the weaknesses in the Zarkari fleet. Zarkari ships were built for power, but they were bulky and slow, with vulnerable underbellies and weak points in their engines. The AI didn't waste time. Hundreds of autonomous fighters were launched from the UNS Vengeance, their sleek forms darting toward the Zarkari ships with terrifying precision. The AI-controlled fighters moved faster than the Zarkari could track, weaving through their formations and targeting the weak points. Each move was choreographed by the AI, turning the battle into a dance of destruction. The Zarkari were used to fighting enemies who needed time to process and react, but the human fleet was different. The autonomous fighters didn't just attack, they anticipated every move, countered every strategy, and overwhelmed the Zarkari at every turn. The speed and efficiency of the human fighters were so shocking that the Zarkari commanders couldn't keep up. Their weapons fired at empty space, their attempts at evasion failed, and their ships began to fall apart. The human AI didn't just target ships, it predicted the Zarkari fleet's every move, and as their tactics failed one after another, a wave of panic began to spread through the Zarkari ranks. Meanwhile, above the battlefield, the UNS Vengeance unleashed its full arsenal. From its massive cannons, it launched orbital bombardments that rained down on the Zarkari fleet. Explosions lit up the sky, and the Zarkari ships began to disintegrate in the intense heat of the bombardments. The sheer destructive power of the UNS Vengeance was overwhelming, and with each explosion, the morale of the Zarkari fleet dipped lower. The Zarkari fighters tried to engage in close-quarters combat with the human ships, but they were too slow and outmatched. The human fighters, moving at breakneck speeds, dodged and countered every attack. The dogfights were fierce, but they were also short. Every time a Zarkari ship locked onto a human fighter, the AI anticipated their move and guided the fighter into a perfect counterattack. knocking the Zarkari ship out of the fight before they could even fire a shot. The Zarkari fleet was quickly turning into a wreckage of burning ships. Every time they tried to regroup, the human AI anticipated their plans. The Zarkari's most experienced commanders couldn't keep up with the predictive algorithms that powered the UNS Vengeance. It wasn't just the technology. It was the humans' ability to adapt and learn faster than anything the Zarkari had ever encountered. The human eye also began to target the Zarkari leadership. The Zarkari command ships, once safe behind their larger fleets, now found themselves locked in the sights of the human battleship. General Kor's flagship, once towering and powerful, was now vulnerable. The UNS Vengeance fired again, sending a powerful railgun shot straight through the heart of the command ship's shield. The Zarkari fleet's communications scrambled, and General Kor's voice crackled over the intercom, calling for immediate reinforcements. But it was already too late. The Zarkari fleet was breaking apart at an alarming rate. On the bridge of the UNS Vengeance, Captain Miranda stood, watching the destruction unfold. Her face was stoic, but there was a glimmer of something: pride, determination, and relief in her eyes. She knew this was the moment humanity had been waiting for. No longer would they be seen as a primitive species. No longer would they be underestimated. With every blast, the Zarkari fleet was reminded of one unchangeable truth: humanity was not to be trifled with. As the Zarkari fleet scrambled to retreat, the UNS Vengeance's AI locked on to their last escape routes. It was like a predator closing in on its prey, relentless and unforgiving. The Zarkari attempted to flee, but the human ships had already anticipated their every move. A wave of fighter jets sped ahead, intercepting any ships attempting to break through the human blockade. One by one, the Zarkari ships were destroyed, their weak points torn apart by the precision of the human weapons. By the time the Zarkari realized they were defeated, it was too late. Their fleet, once massive and intimidating, was now little more than a collection of burning wrecks in the void. The UNS Vengeance, standing triumphant in the center of it all, didn't just win the battle. It made a statement. Humanity was no longer the underdog. They were a force to be reckoned with. The Zarkari commanders' voices were now filled with desperation. What had started as an attack on Earth had quickly turned into an existential crisis. Their leaders were defeated. Their fleet was broken. And the humans, who once seemed weak and fragile, had shown them what it truly meant to be a hunter in the galaxy. The tide of battle was turning. The once confident Zarkari fleet had been reduced to a scattered, disorganized mess, and General Kor, watching from his flagship, knew the end was near. His once imposing armada was being systematically torn apart by the UNS Vengeance. Each ship the humans destroyed felt like a blow to the Zarkari's pride. Their weapons were useless against the human ship's impenetrable shields, and their fleet was disintegrating before their very eyes. Seeing their defeat becoming inevitable, General Kor made the decision to retreat. His voice boomed through the communication channels, ordering the fleet to fall back and regroup. But as his fleet tried to escape, they found their escape routes blocked. The UNS Vengeance's eye was always one step ahead. With a quick calculation, the AI had anticipated the Zarkari's move and targeted their engines, disabling them in a flash. Zarkari ships that had tried to make a break for it now drifted helplessly, their engines damaged, leaving them sitting ducks for the human forces. The UNS Vengeance didn't just overpower them. It controlled the battlefield with terrifying precision. The Zarkari, now trapped and with no way to flee, were left with only one option: to fight or face complete annihilation. While the space battle raged on the surface of Earth, the fight had only just begun. Soldier Bonner, a grizzled veteran of many battles, led his squad into the heart of the conflict. The Zarkari had begun their assault on Earth, and their goal was to board the planet's surface and conquer it from within. Bonner and his team were part of the human resistance, tasked with holding back the alien invaders and protecting the planet from an invasion unlike anything humanity had ever faced. Bonner's team was vastly outgunned. The Zarkari, equipped with advanced energy weapons and cybernetic enhancements, had the technological advantage. But humanity had something more powerful: determination. With guns drawn and their hearts set, Bonner's team stood firm against the wave of Zarkari soldiers. The sound of clashing weapons filled the air as the humans fought back with everything they had. In the thick of the fighting, Bonner's team used their wits and adaptability to outmaneuver the technologically superior invaders. Though the Zarkari were faster and better equipped, Bonner's squad fought with an unmatched ferocity. Each hand-to-hand combat encounter, every fight for control of a building or a barricade, was a battle of willpower. The Zarkari expected the humans to break under pressure, but instead they found themselves facing an unexpected force. The human soldiers fought for something far stronger than just survival. They fought for Earth, for their families, for their future. The fight was brutal, and the losses were heavy. Bonner could see his comrades fall around him. Private Collins was struck down by an energy blast, his body crumpling to the floor in a heap of armor and blood. Sergeant Davis was overwhelmed by two Zarkari soldiers, his last moments spent fighting back with everything he had before being taken down. Bonner felt the weight of each loss, each friend who sacrificed everything. The sting of their deaths was felt deeply in his heart, but it only made him more determined to push forward. He couldn't let their deaths be in vain. As Bonner led his team through the chaos, he knew the importance of their mission. Earth's survival depended on them. He and his team weren't just fighting for their own lives. They were fighting for the future of humanity. The emotional toll of the battle was becoming unbearable, but the bond between Bonner and his squad was stronger than ever. Each of them knew that sacrifice was part of the price of survival. Brotherhood was the only thing keeping them going. Every time they cleared a section of Zarkari invaders, they knew another wave was coming. But they pressed on, not out of fear, but out of love for their home. Bonner had seen the brutality of war before, but nothing prepared him for the weight of this fight. It wasn't just the alien invaders that were dangerous. It was the emotional cost of each lost soldier, each lost friend. But with every fallen comrade, the remaining soldiers became more determined. They would protect Earth, no matter what. Back in space, the battle had reached a tipping point. The Zarkari, unable to retreat, began to panic. They had underestimated humanity at every turn. They had thought Earth would fall easily under the weight of their invasion, but the humans were proving to be something different. They were proving that even in the face of overwhelming odds, they would not give up. They would fight until the very last breath. As the UNS Vengeance continued to dominate the skies, General Kor realized that the Zarkari fleet's fate was sealed. The humans weren't just fighting for their survival. They were fighting with a passion and fire that was unstoppable. His fleet, disorganized and demoralized, had no chance against the relentless onslaught of the human forces. Bonner, as he watched his comrades fall around him, knew that this fight would define the future of humanity. The Zarkari might have had the technology, but the humans had something far stronger. An unbreakable spirit. Even as his team lost soldiers, they gained something more. A sense of unity and purpose that made them more dangerous than the invaders could ever understand. By the end of the battle, the human resistance had driven the Zarkari forces to their breaking point. Their fleets were scattered and broken, and the Zarkari invaders on Earth had been repelled. But for Bonner and his team, the victory felt hollow. They had lost so much, so many good men and women. Yet in that moment, standing on the front lines, Bonner knew one thing for sure: Earth would survive, and humanity would rise stronger than ever before. As the last Zarkari forces were driven off, the fight had only just begun to sink in. The cost had been heavy, but the human spirit had proven to be more powerful than anything the invaders could throw at them. And in that moment, Bonner vowed that they would never give up. Not now, not ever. The battle had been one-sided for far too long. The Zarkari fleet was losing, and General Kor knew it. His ships, once sleek and powerful, were now nothing more than floating wreckage. Their weapons failing to break through the UNS Vengeance's defenses, The human eye was simply too intelligent, too capable. It had predicted their every move, countered every strategy, and turned their once imposing fleet into a helpless target. In their desperation, the Zarkari decided to play their final card, a weapon so dangerous, so powerful, that it had the potential to wipe out human civilization in an instant. The AI-driven superweapon was a device of unimaginable power, designed to hack into and control any opposing system, overriding defenses and causing chaos. This weapon was their last hope, a last-ditch attempt to turn the tide and break the humans' technological advantage. The Zarkari launched the superweapon, sending it on a trajectory toward Earth. The weapon itself was an intelligent entity, capable of hacking into the human fleet's systems and unleashing its power on a global scale. If the weapon succeeded, it would cripple the human AI and leave Earth vulnerable to the full force of the Zarkari's remaining ships. But the UNS Vengeance was no ordinary ship. It had been built with one purpose: to overcome any threat, no matter how powerful. The ship's eye was not only an advanced combat strategist, it was designed to withstand even the most devastating cyberattacks. Counter-hacking drones were deployed from the human fleet as soon as the weapon was launched, creating a digital battlefield in the space between the two forces. The drones engaged in a battle of wits with the Zarkari superweapon, trying to neutralize its control and block its signal. As the AI-driven superweapon neared Earth, the human fleet went into high alert. The counter-hacking drones swarmed the weapon, disabling its communication channels and scrambling its programming. The Zarkari weapon fought back, trying to override the drones, but the human eye had anticipated its every move. Using cloaking technology, the humans masked their own movements, making it nearly impossible for the Zarkari to track their attacks. The space battle intensified as the Zarkari fleet fought to protect their weapon. Their ships fired relentlessly, but the UNS Vengeance moved with stunning speed and precision, dodging attacks and retaliating with devastating force. Every time the Zarkari thought they had the upper hand, the humans adapted, adjusting their strategy on the fly. The human eye was simply too fast, too smart. Every decision, every counterattack was made before the Zarkari had time to react. As the battle raged, the Zarkari fleet began to fracture. The superweapon, despite its overwhelming power, was being shut down piece by piece. The counter-hacking drones worked in perfect unison, finding weaknesses in the weapon's programming and exploiting them. With every successful breach, the weapon's effectiveness diminished. Soon, it was just another tool in the Zarkari's failing arsenal. Despite their best efforts, the Zarkari fleet couldn't keep up. Human fighters continued to swarm their ships, their attacks more unpredictable and deadly with every passing second. The UNS Vengeance and its fleet were relentless, and it was clear that the Zarkari's last-ditch effort to turn the tide had failed. The human AI knew exactly what to do next. With the Zarkari weapon neutralized, the UNS Vengeance deployed a final devastating blow. Using the AI's combat analysis, the human fleet launched a series of precision strikes on the remaining Zarkari ships. The AI calculated the exact positions of each Zarkari vessel, targeting the most vulnerable points and ensuring that every attack counted. The Zarkari fleet, once so imposing, was now reduced to scattered debris. Their ships were decimated by the human eye's foresight and the relentless assault from the UNS Vengeance. Each Zarkari ship that fell was another piece of their empire crumbling, their arrogance shattered by the reality that humans had not only survived their invasion, they had utterly defeated it. The Zarkari commanders could hardly comprehend what was happening. They had thought that the weapon, combined with their superior technology, would be enough to overwhelm the humans, but they had underestimated one crucial thing: the human spirit. The UNS Vengeance wasn't just a warship, it was a symbol of humanity's will to survive. The human fleet fought with an unyielding determination that the Zarkari simply couldn't match. As the last few Zarkari ships attempted to flee, the UNS Vengeance fired one final shot, obliterating the remaining forces. The human fleet had won. The Zarkari, having exhausted their last weapon, were left to retreat, humiliated and defeated. On the surface of Earth, the human soldiers, including Bonner, had heard the news of the fleet's victory. Their battle was over, and while the cost had been high, they knew that humanity had achieved something that seemed impossible. They had not only defended Earth from the Zarkari invasion, they had crushed the most powerful fleet in the galaxy, and they had done it with courage, determination, and a technological advantage that no one had ever predicted. The Zarkari were no longer the top dogs of the galaxy. In the blink of an eye, they had gone from the hunter to the hunted, humbled by a species they had once thought weak and insignificant. The human race had proven itself to be an unstoppable force, one that could rise above any challenge and face down even the most terrifying threats the universe had to offer. The Zarkari fleet, now little more than debris in the cold void of space, could do nothing but retreat. Earth had been saved, but at what cost? The battle had been won, but the true victory would be the legacy of survival left behind. An undeniable message to the galaxy that humanity was no longer the prey. They were now the predators, and anyone who underestimated them would pay the price. The Zarkari fleet was on the verge of collapse. Their ships, once filled with pride and confidence, were now in shambles, scattered throughout space like broken toys. The UNS Vengeance and its AI had destroyed their weapons, crippled their forces, and cornered them in a battle they could not win. General Kor, still alive but barely, knew the end was near. Yet, in their desperation, the Zarkari decided to pull out their final, most dangerous card, something that could bring humanity to its knees. In a last-ditch effort to break the human resolve, the Zarkari launched their bioweapons. These were no ordinary weapons. They were deadly, highly contagious viruses designed to wipe out all life on Earth in a matter of hours. The Zarkari had calculated that if they couldn't defeat humanity with brute force, they could at least ensure Earth's downfall through disease. From their ships in space, the Zarkari unleashed an orbital strike, targeting some of Earth's largest and most critical cities. The missiles carrying the bioweapons shot through space at breakneck speeds, headed directly for the heart of human civilization. If the strike succeeded, it would not only kill millions of people, but also cripple humanity's ability to recover from the attack. The Zarkari had accepted that their fleet was lost, but if they could unleash this biological terror, they could leave a permanent scar on Earth. Back on Earth, however, humanity's response was swift. The UNS Vengeance, despite the heavy losses, was still functioning at full capacity. Inside the ship, Bonner and the crew were monitoring the incoming strike. As the missiles entered the atmosphere, it became clear that they would reach their targets within moments, and there would be no way to stop them without immediate action. Bonner, watching the data come in on his screen, felt a cold chill run down his spine. The Zarkari bioweapons were unlike anything humanity had ever faced. The viruses they carried could decimate entire populations, and once released, they would be nearly impossible to contain. The Zarkari, in their final act of defiance, were planning to end humanity once and for all. But Bonner was determined to stop them. The UNS Vengeance's eye, which had already proven itself to be an unbeatable force in space combat, quickly calculated the missile trajectories. The human fleet, knowing that they couldn't allow the strike to succeed, launched a counteroffensive. The AI's ability to process data in real time allowed it to override the incoming missile trajectories, diverting them from their intended targets. The crew, including Bonner, worked together to activate the last-minute countermeasures, a combination of anti-missile defense systems and stealth technology that would confuse the Zarkari targeting systems. Just as the missiles began to fall toward Earth's surface, laser cannons and EMP pulses from the human fleet activated, intercepting the incoming warheads. Each missile exploded in a flash of light, harmless before it could reach the cities they had been targeted at. The bioweapons were destroyed mid-air, their deadly payloads never even touching the ground. It was a moment of triumph for humanity. The Zarkari had gambled everything on this last strike, But the humans' AI had outsmarted them once again. The bioweapons were neutralized, and the threat to Earth was averted. But as the Zarkari fleet watched in horror, they realized that their victory was slipping further and further away. They had no more cards to play, no more weapons to unleash. They had misjudged humanity every step of the way. With their fleet scattered, their bioweapons destroyed, and their commanders defeated, the Zarkari were left with no other option. Surrender. General Kor, who had been so sure of the Zarkari's dominance, now stood at the edge of annihilation. He knew that if he didn't act quickly, his entire species would be wiped out by the relentless humans. The human fleet, now fully empowered by the victory, and the undeniable strength of their AI, pushed forward. The Zarkari had no chance. They were on the run, and every move they made was anticipated and countered before they could even begin. The humans didn't just beat them. They crushed their will to fight. The AI, which had guided the fleet from the very beginning, wasn't just a tool of war. It was the heart of humanity's survival. Every battle, every strategy, every victory was thanks to its unparalleled intelligence and adaptability. Faced with the certainty of their total destruction, the Zarkari fleet had no choice but to surrender. They could either give up or face the wrath of the UNS Vengeance and its fleet. General Kor, knowing the fate of his people rested in his hands, sent out a final communication. His voice, once filled with confidence and arrogance, now trembled with defeat. We surrender. Humanity had done the impossible. Earth had survived. Against all odds, the human fleet had turned the tide, pushed back an invincible enemy, and defended their home. The Zarkari, the once great conquerors of the galaxy, had been humbled by a race they had thought weak, insignificant, and unworthy of their attention. As the Zarkari ships began to retreat, leaving Earth's orbit, the human fleet, led by the UNS Vengeance, stood victorious. The mission wasn't over, but the battle had been won. Humanity had proven that they were a force to be reckoned with. They were no longer the prey. They were the predators. On the surface of Earth, Bonner and his fellow soldiers, who had fought so hard to protect their planet, looked up at the sky. They had lost many friends, made countless sacrifices, and faced down their own fears. But through it all, they had triumphed. Earth was safe, and humanity had earned its place among the stars. The war was over, but the legacy of their survival would echo through history for generations to come. The Zarkari had underestimated humans. They thought they could crush them, wipe them off the face of the galaxy. But they hadn't counted on the human spirit, a spirit that would never back down, never give up, and would always fight for its survival. The final stand had been a victory for humanity. The victory was overwhelming. The Zarkari Dominion, once the most feared empire in the galaxy, had surrendered. General Kor, the leader of the Zarkari forces, had no choice but to send a transmission to the UNS Vengeance. His voice, once filled with arrogance and pride, was now broken and desperate. The Zarkari fleet had been decimated, their bioweapons neutralized, and their final attempts to destroy humanity had failed. Kor's transmission was a plea for mercy, a sign that the Zarkari, who had conquered and enslaved countless civilizations across the galaxy, had finally met their match. They had underestimated humanity, and now they were paying the price for their hubris. We surrender. General Kor's voice crackled through the comms. Please, spare us. We never thought humans could defeat us. You've proven that you are not weak. You are a force to be reckoned with. The transmission was sent out to the remnants of the Zarkari Dominion, and the humbling truth was now broadcast across the galaxy. Humanity had defeated the Zarkari. Earth had survived. The UNS Vengeance, with its powerful AI, had led humanity to victory, and the Zarkari knew that they had no choice but to surrender or face complete annihilation. But this wasn't just a victory for humanity. It was a statement. As the UNS Vengeance prepared to send a final transmission, a message not only to the defeated Zarkari, but to the entire galaxy, humanity's resolve was made clear. The message was brief but undeniable. We will not be intimidated. We will not bow to any superior force. The Zarkari have fallen. Let this be a warning to any who think they can conquer us. Humanity's rise has only just begun. This was more than a declaration of victory. It was a promise. Humanity was no longer a weak, primitive species to be conquered. They had proven themselves capable of standing toe-to-toe with the most technologically advanced and ruthless empire the galaxy had ever known. Now, humanity was sending a message to the Galactic Concord, the alliance of powerful species that ruled the galaxy in the shadows. The message was clear. Humanity would not be ignored, and they would not be oppressed. As the transmission was broadcast across the stars, fear spread like wildfire. The Galactic Concord, which had watched from the sidelines, hoping that the Zarkari would crush the humans, suddenly realized the truth. Humanity had become a threat, and one that they could not easily dismiss. They knew that Earth's victory wasn't just a one-time event. It was a symbol of humanity's potential. A species that could rise up against the Zarkari, who had once seemed invincible, could rise against anyone. The Galactic Concord was terrified. They had watched for millennia as the Zarkari conquered world after world, annihilating civilizations that dared to stand in their way. The Zarkari were the galaxy's dominant force, and no one had ever dared to challenge their authority. But now, that was no longer true. Humanity had proven that they were not a species to be easily conquered. The Zarkari Dominion had been defeated not through superior technology or overwhelming numbers, but through human ingenuity, determination, and the power of their eye. As the Zarkari retreated into the unknown corners of the galaxy, their empire in shambles, the message humanity had sent resonated across the stars. It was a warning to the Galactic Concord and to any other species that might have considered taking Earth for their own. The message was simple. Humanity was ready to fight back. The human spirit had proven to be stronger than anything the galaxy had thrown at them. And now, the galaxy would have to reckon with that. The Galactic Concord couldn't ignore the message any longer. They had long ruled from the shadows, manipulating weaker species and controlling the galaxy's politics from behind closed doors. But now, the galaxy was changing. Humanity's rise had begun, and they had already made an indelible mark on the galaxy. It was only a matter of time before other species, emboldened by humanity's example, would rise up as well. The Zarkari's fall was just the first domino to fall in a much larger shift. For the people of Earth, however, the fight was far from over. The UNS Vengeance had won the battle, but the war for humanity's place in the galaxy was just beginning. The Zarkari may have been defeated, but their empire was vast, and there were other species out there, still watching and wondering what humanity would do next. The Galactic Concord might have been shaken, but they weren't going to sit idly by. The next moves would be critical. As Bonner and the rest of the crew on the UNS Vengeance prepared to celebrate their hard-won victory, they knew that the real challenge was still ahead. They had proven that humanity could rise to the occasion, but they would need to be ready for whatever came next. The galaxy was vast, and humanity had just made its presence known. Earth would never be the same again. The message that had been sent was clear. Humanity was no longer a species to be taken lightly. They had faced their greatest challenge and had emerged victorious. But the stars were vast, and now they were no longer looking to the darkness in fear. They were looking up with newfound hope and determination. The galaxy was about to change forever, and humanity was ready to claim its place among the stars.